Hey, welcome to the Cam and Otis Show. We're a father-son business podcast where we talk with other lifelong learners about making an impact and solving big problems. And as our guest Jay and I discovered just a minute ago in the green room, Camden's got a big problem, and that problem is he hadn't spent enough time in the Colorado mountains. So, Cam, what's the plan to fix that? Make an impact in the mountains.
Just had this idea. I think I'll talk with Coach Duffy at practice today. Maybe we get CSU on the schedule, and if we go up to Fort Collins, and I'll just spend an extra week up there. We go off in the mountains. That could work out, right?
Yeah, right in the middle of rugby season, you take a week off up in the mountains. That always works.
Sure, they won't mind.
And I'm sure, Jay, you've had an experience or two where that key guy on the team has said, hey, I know we got this big proposal we're working on, but you know what? I got to go on vacation.
Yeah, no, that's right. And I'm like, yeah, I'm all for you taking that vacation. Let's look at future times when you could do that.
Yeah.
There you go.
Now's not the time.
Yep. You hear that philosophy right there, folks. By the way, for those of you who haven't read Jay's bio yet, he's a good friend of mine, and I think I'm almost 100% sure, Camden, you can fact check me on this one, that Jay, you are my first former boss to be on our show, and that's quite a privilege.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's most people that work for me, they don't want to talk to me anymore, so that's good.
But and you know what? I had a great experience working for you. We had a great team. It was a lot of fun, and it's helped put me where I am today. And one of the things that, as I was prepping for the show today, I wanted to jump into was, how did you grow to the company that ISS was when you finally said, all right, I've had enough fun for now, fellas? I know that's a really wide open question, but there's some major stages I'd love for you to kind of share with us.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, when we started, there was just the four of us that started the company, and we really weren't expecting it to grow that big. It was, in a sense, it was kind of a lifestyle business. We thought that we could. We all worked for big companies, and we thought we could do better for our customer than we felt like they were not being treated very well.
Mm-hmm.
They were kind of a number, and they were relegated to the back seat. So we thought, hey, look, let's we can create a lifestyle company, come work with a couple customers that we know, do some things, and we didn't really expect to grow, and we didn't in the beginning. It was very flat early on, and then we kind of hit this curve, 3 or 4 years in, where it just became a rocket sled, and it wasn't completely planned.
Mm-hmm.
It was we had planned, but it kind of exceeded a lot of our hopes and dreams, and it just kept going for 10 or 15 years, that just at a pace that was crazy. And you get that's a good pace. It's good for everybody. Growth is fun. People that work in your company, they get a chance to experience new things quicker than they would in a flat company that's not growing. So it was a lot of fun. But what we did find is that, things tend to plateau, things tend to slow down. And even though it was, maybe an 8 or 9 or 10 year run where it was just constant uphill, once we started getting into that reality of, hey, okay, things aren't 20, 30% over every year, we started looking at how do we keep that adrenaline going? How do we keep this thing going? And also realizing that we needed some help. So there was a point in time when we brought in a partner that brought in some capital and some ideas, and that was our next. That we looked at that, and it was primarily because our growth curve had kind of slowed down, and we'd kind of gotten addicted to that heavy growth and providing opportunities for our customers and our employees and everybody. And then as that started slowing down, let's bring in a partner and let's see if we can keep it going. And so we did that.
What kind of lessons did you learn during those? Because you said 8 to 10 years, I think, of growth there. That's impressive in of itself. What kind of lessons did you learn that let you sustain that growth for so long?
Well, I mean, I mentor a lot of people through Exponential Impact. They're startups right now, and it's interesting. I think where a lot of companies struggle, that good companies that kind of have a nice start and then they don't finish well. If you think about it, if you're going to start up a company, you have as much time as you want to prepare for that first phase. You could think about it for years before you actually pull the trigger and say, okay, we're going to go. The problem is that the second phase, you don't control the schedule. So you don't get to take that next 2 or 3 years to say, well, what about this growth part? What about this scaling part? You need completely different skills as an entrepreneur, as a leader, to scale a company as you do to start one. And so people that start up a company, they're not always ready for the staircase that's going to take them up. Those stair steps they're like an escalator. They're moving. You don't get to choose when you're going to take that step. Those things are moving. And so one thing that I see are people that make it past that. Oh, we think we might make it. And then they fall off the escalator because they're not ready, to do that transmission shift to say, okay, let's do that. And I do think that was one area where ISS, my company, we did well. We went in and I'm not a serial entrepreneur. I'm not a guy that goes out and starts a bunch of companies. I just got lucky with that one. But I am a guy that can go in and help scale a company once it's kind of made some traction, and do it at a time scale that doesn't force you to fall off the escalator. So one lesson learned that I always tell people is prepare for success, because you'll fail if you don't. If you fail in step 0, it doesn't matter. But if you succeed in step 1, so assume you're going to succeed in step 1 or 2 and have a plan for 2, 3, 4. Don't put a huge amount of energy in it, but plan for that, so that when you have to change your, shift into a different gear, it's not a big culture. Oh my God, we got to stop the presses, because the clock won't stop for you.
Now, Jay,
does that make sense?
Oh yeah, yeah. And I'm going to call you out as unusual, because you did the startup thing, but you grew the company ISS into Parsons as a merger, but you survived that and learned as you went. How did you? What was your process of learning? Because most guys, in your shoe, the 4 of us sitting around the table, hey, lifestyle business guys, rah rah rah, and then all of a sudden now it's not. I mean, you and I. It's been a long time. You and I had this conversation a long time ago about that feeling that you have in the company where you knew everybody, but it got to the point where you couldn't know everybody. How did you become CEO and make that change in your life and the way you led the company?
Yeah, and I think that most founders that I've come across, they really don't make good CEOs at scale. That's really not their skill set. And their skill set was coming up with a good idea, coming up with an interesting idea, making it come to light, making it happen. And they're really brilliant at that. That's why I said I kind of got lucky in that first part. The other part was one that was I'm a problem solver. I'm a person that once you get into a series and if you have a growing business, you just have boatloads of problems and puzzles and things like that. So I'm more suited to that. And so someone with my talents probably wouldn't survive in startups very often, but I got lucky that got out of that and got into the real sweet spot, which is, what are we going to do here? And it is a very big challenge for businesses to for example, if you have employees, you got to have good people, right? I mean, that's the key to everything. And you've got to have people that are really engaged. Well, it's one thing to say, hey, we're going to lunch, we're going to talk about this, and I'm going to talk with all my employees because we're going to go to lunch and we're going to Wendy's and we're going to sit and talk about this. But as you grow and you can't do that, how do you change and keep that? How do you get that same level of engagement from those people that are critical? Every single person is making your company who you are. How do you do that? And it's a challenge. It's a challenge, and it's. I think at ISS we got fairly good at it, but nobody gets an A+ at that. And I think what we did is we really had a good vision of who we were. And then as we got layers of leaders that were made sure that they really felt that and really plugged them into their, try to keep the ratios down to where there's only 5 so they can go to lunch or they can get to know. They know that, hey, the spouse is trying to get another job over here. The kids they have a special needs kid, and they don't want to be a manager. They just want to stay a technical, or they know that about these people. They can plug them into what's important about the company, and the company's trying to do this. And this is our vision, and this is what we want to do. So that you can somehow get that same thing of, hey, me just sitting down with you having lunch at Wendy's and saying, this is what we're doing. And yeah, isn't it exciting? You still try to get some of that, but you have to do it through layers. So when you have 800 people, which we kind of peaked around 800 people,
Yep.
you need to be able to, you still need to do that. You still need to plug those people into the company and have them feel like they're plugged in, but also not treat them like they're numbers, and know that this person is in this part of their career. This is what's going on in their family. And to do that, you've got to have other good people that come in and are leaders that give them a group of 5, 6, 7 people and say, help plug these people in. And so I think that's one of the things that we did a decent job of. Again, I look back and I don't give ourselves an A+, but that's where I see a lot of companies struggle with the transition of the point you said is, hey, we know everybody. Hey, come over to our house. Let's have a drink. To the point where you're not really doing that as much, but people still feel like they're plugged into some vision, and they feel like the company's plugged into their personal vision.
You said you didn't get the A+ on it. Looking back, what are some things where you fell a little bit short? Maybe some lessons looking back that you missed at the time.
Well, I think that I think personally, I'm a person that likes to give a lot of second, third, and fourth chances to people. I like to really, hey, look, we're going to work this out. You've got so many talents, these other things. I think one of the things that I personally would do a little different is be a little less patient with some people, because when you have that many people and you have a few people that are causing pain to others in the company, you don't see that as the CEO a lot of times. You just see the other part of that, which is, I see your upside, I see your talent, but I'm not really living the pain that others have to deal with every day. So one thing I admit that, and I've been called out on it correctly, is that I was over patient with people that caused pain. And that's a negative. I mean, I see that, because people can be brilliant, but if they don't fit in and help and be just people you want to work with, then you should probably not work with them. And, as you grow, you start to be a little less discriminating because you have no choice. And sometimes you get some people that don't fit culturally in, and you've got to fit in culturally. Anything that's not fitting in culturally to your company is a fly in the ointment. I mean, it just, no matter how many other good things come with it. And so I think that's, one of mine is to try to recognize those earlier. And I'm all for second chances and maybe third, but maybe not fourth and fifth chances. So.
On that, actually, I got to follow up on that. Sorry, Dad. You talked about the culture fit and how crucial that is, but then you also said, talking about the vision, like understanding their personal vision and how that aligns. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think it's like culture, you have to have the fit there, but a lot of people want to force the vision fit, where it's like, no, you have to be the next manager. Like, you have to go. Like, you have to believe in this company as much as I do. And I think that's not a very good goal usually, but the culture fit is what people should focus on. Could you kind of tease those two out a little bit?
Yeah, and it's, I never expected everybody to kind of feel the same way about the company that I did, and the other founders, and then the other early stage. But what you do want to do is be very clear about what it is that you are, what it is. And you want to do that early on in the interview process, or when you're just, because you want them to know what they're getting into. And can you resonate with that? Because if you can't, you're going to be going cross grain, and it's just not going to be fun for either of us. But if you can see the grain of the wood ahead of time, and we both look at that and say, yeah, I mean, you don't buy things quite the same way that we do, but you're in the grain, then that works. And then once you get in there, they start adopting some. I've seen it. They start adopting some of your vision, some of your thing. Other ones, they start deviating, and the company changes. And it changes not because a person on top says we're changing. It changes because the people underneath collectively morph the vision of where we're going. And that's where a culture allows for that. Now, when I say plug it back into their own personal vision, I don't necessarily focus on just professionally, but I do mean, here's what I'm trying to accomplish as a person. I'm trying to pay the bills. I've got a new family. I just moved to town. This is what I'm trying to accomplish. and be plugged into that, understand it, so that when we ask you not to go to the Colorado mountains because we have a proposal, I know that you really need to. You really have a need to do that. And
I do, Jay. I really do.
Wait a second there. Time out. I might have to call that one off here.
I think Jay's saying I should spend a month in the mountains, Dad. I'm going to have to get some vacation time.
Jay, we've talked a lot about vision already in the show, and I know that's a powerful thing, a tool that you've used. How did you and the team continue to create vision that drew you forward in it also?
Yeah, and I was very hesitant for most of my time at ISS to use the word vision because it was just too highfalutin. It was just too, I don't know. There was something about it that just bothered me and a lot of others. But that doesn't mean that underneath the hood, we don't know who we are and what we're trying to accomplish. We knew what spaces, what gaps in the market we were trying to fill. We knew why we were going to be better at that. We knew that we had, for example, a business model that was different from a lot of our competitors. So we talked about it. We rode that horse. We said, this is who we are. And I remember, we'd sit down and we'd have employee orientations, and I'd come in and spend a couple hours. That's what we talked about. Why are we a little different? What are you getting yourself into? Why do we have a good future? Why is it protected from the normal pressures? Why, this is who we are, and welcome. Come join us. That was kind of a vision, but it was really more just who we are. It wasn't some vision statement or some mission statement that we all rallied around and said, because those did not resonate with us as people. Those kinds of things that we saw in our competitors, we just weren't as big into that. But we did know who we were, and that's important. And I think it's really important. And I think that culture comes from that. If you know who you are, then your culture can rally around who are you. And if your employees know that up front, then they can get on board with that and say, yep, this is who we are. And you hear them telling the story to customers or peers or other people. It's so exciting to hear them with their own slant and their own version. This is who we are. And I think that shared sense of that is what I would call vision. Not the vision statement that you go paint on the wall and say, hey, let's look at that every day. This is something we didn't have to look at every day. This is just something about who we were. And we tried hard when we brought in new people to help them understand during the interview process to make sure they were good for it. But afterwards, give them a little bit more meat on the bone so that they could, let's get excited. And I think they saw my excitement. I think they saw others because we were different. We were different from a company perspective. And this is why it's not going to last forever. But for now, this is who we are, and it's cool. And we're just unique. Our customers love us. We're working on very, very righteous missions that are very important. And your skills, you're a computer scientist, you could apply your skills against anything. Mm-hmm. You could do insurance, nothing wrong with insurance. You could build cars, you could do all kinds of stuff. But here's what we do. And it's a very righteous mission that you can go home every night and feel like you're making a big difference to people that are trying to protect this country. So you marry that all up, and that's who we were. And then people got on board. And I felt like that's what gave us a lot of momentum to keep people working. Because, you got a lot of attrition. You got 800 people. You got people leaving all the time. You can't have that. How do you get people to stay? And it was with that sense of we're doing something cool. We know who we are, and our customers and mission is just so important to the world.
This episode of the Cam and Otis Show is brought to you by Evergood Adventure Wine.
Our loyal listeners know Evergood's founder, Matthew Hexter, and our good friend from his appearances on the show that have never disappointed. And Evergood Adventure Wines doesn't disappoint either.
No, it doesn't. Evergood is a craft winery from Colorado that makes wine from lemons, not grapes.
That's right. Picture this, adult lemonade.
Oh yeah, perfect for your next backyard barbecue or hanging out with friends at the beach or the pool. No need to drink a warm red grape wine when it's 100 degrees out or much hotter here in Tucson. Evergood over ice is the perfect refreshment for a hot summer day.
And they come in a variety of flavors, including lemon, strawberry, lime, my favorite for margaritas, grapefruit, and watermelon, which comes in a cool pouch, by the way. These non-carbonated wines check all the boxes. Gluten-free, vegan, low sugar, and low in sulfites. Best of all, they taste damn good, and they have fun names too.
Yeah, like their OG lemon wine called Skierpy. Yeah, y'all heard that one right, Skierpy. And I'll tell you, Skierpy is also one of my favorites.
Evergood now ships to 41 states, so you can order your lemon wines online at evergoodadventurewines.com.
Plus, Matthew is being kind enough to offer 20% off for all of our listeners. Just use promo code Cam-Otis at checkout to get 20% off and start enjoying these amazing lemon wines.
So y'all go to evergoodadventurewines.com or click the link in the description in the show. Click buy now to redeem your Cam and Otis show exclusive discount.
On that, actually, there's something we've talked about, like a concept before of the, like, psychologically speaking, of like somebody's wants versus their want to want. And I'm curious, Jay, if you, your experience in the hiring process trying to tease out those two, because you could get somebody who wants to have this kind of a culture, but if they're not actually that kind of a person, then they're not going to be a good fit down the line, even if they say all the right things because they think they want it. How do you tease those
it's
two
a
out?
challenge. It really is, because, interviewing is an art, and some people are very good at it. But when I say they're very good at it, what they're very good is pretending to be something that the interviewer wants to hear. That's not necessarily a good thing for either party. And so, you do try to get in, the best interviewers and the best people, they don't have a cookie cutter set of, a checklist of questions. They really are doing more open-ended stuff where they're like, and sometimes it has nothing to do with the job. Sometimes it's just to try to expose the personality and give somebody a chance to be themselves, because it's a little bit easier to game a checklist and be good at that, pass the test. But what you really want is, this is more of a, kind of a, like a first date type of thing. And you really want to, hey, do you really want to have kids? Are your parents, how overbearing are you? You want to really get into the stuff that would, be the foundation of a relationship. And so I'm not saying that we were necessarily good at that or not. I don't think I was, but I do know that when I interviewed people to come for the company, I focused on the soft stuff and really just tried to get them to talk about stuff they weren't expecting to talk about, because then I know that I'm forcing them off script a little bit, and that's where you find out the real stuff. But it's a challenge. I mean, because you don't, sometimes they think they want that. And so, so their off script is even, but you have to, I had quite a few people, and you'd see them, that are like, it's just not really the Defense Department. There's something about working with that as a customer that bothers me. Yeah. I mean, that's fair. That's okay. But you're probably not, this is not a good place for you. And I don't want to be a place where you come for 6 months and get some experience and go somewhere else. We're looking for a longer relationship here. So those people, you politely just kind of say, this is not the place. So, but culturally though, you really want people that are really more about, I like to be with a group of really smart people. I don't have to be the one smart person in a group of mediocre people. We were looking for people that could handle that kind of pressure of lots of smart people around them that were all very good and wanted to work together and not be the solo artist. And that's what we look for.
So NFL's kicking off here real soon, Jay. And everybody always talks about the GOAT, right? The greatest of all times. This guy was this and this guy was that. Would you, looking at knowing everything I'm not saying you can't use the current data, but if you were to take ISS from 20 plus years ago and plop it down, and the four of y'all started it today, could you be just as successful?
The potential is there, but not with the same business model. The business model was right for its time. It was unique, it was interesting, and it came at the right place at the right time. But we were all problem solvers. So you put us down in today, we would solve different problems in a different way. And yeah, I think personality-wise, we could have succeeded. But I think we were very fortunate in a lot of ways to be at the right place at the right time. And we didn't have a business model in a business plan a year before we started the company. The business plan and the business model probably came in year 3, where we were like, oh, that's who we are. It was kind of this moment of that's who we are. And so you could have that kind of time here. But yeah, I mean, I can't envision it, but I could see that the parts would be there and they would just learn to solve problems and build something different for whatever today needs. But I don't think that the business, when we started in 98, so that's quite a while ago, the world is a completely different place than it was back then. And so you can't take that business model, pick it up and relocate it here. It wouldn't work. And so when I mentor people today, I don't try to force them into, hey, you need to do this. I've seen it work. It's not going to work today.
What do you think about? Oh, go ahead, Cam.
How do you go ahead? So I just was going to say, how do you make sure that you're in the right time period on that? Because I think this is a really easy thing when you have, we always talk about the business is your baby. Well, my baby's going to be successful no matter what, because it's my baby. And sometimes you can kind of get yourself into that mode where, I mean, we've talked about it with some of my businesses, Dad. I'm like, I could probably go and do this now, and I could do these different things, but it still might not be the right time. How do you check yourself on that to make sure you're working with the right?
Well, and I think that, obviously in a entrepreneurial type of setting, the individual founders, their traits are very important, especially in the early stages of a company. And I do think one of the really the things that really cause problems is hubris. I do think that, you have a little bit of success, all of a sudden you just feel brilliant. All of a sudden you just feel like you can't do any, and that's a problem. And so what you really need to do is you need to, it's okay, celebrate the victories, but you need to kind of set that ego a little aside. And I think that the world is constantly changing, and if you're not adapting with it, and your company's not adapting, and you say, I've seen this, I know it works, and you're just like, I'm gonna make it work. That type of forcefulness, or just, I'll go back to hubris, I think is a danger. So you have to be malleable, and you have to be humble, and you have to know that the past performance is not an indicator of future success, a guarantee of future success. You just have to know that, and you have to treat every period of time, whether it's a day, as a new set of challenges and a problem that you need to kind of crack. And using the test scores from 3 years ago isn't the right way to do that.
Yeah, could you show me your SAT scores, please? Oh yeah. We don't want to talk about that low number in this room. I can tell you that. Jay, I was wondering. You said something I thought was really interesting with y'all when you started up. You said, all right, let's fix something. Let's get together, sit around the kitchen table. I have this great vision of y'all, by the way. We'll have to sketch it out one day over a cup of coffee, I think. But this great vision of y'all sitting around the kitchen table saying, all right, what about this? What about that? Yeah, let's jump on this problem. Mm-hmm. And then you figured out, oh, what's our plan going forward? And I find that interesting in a longer time period than I usually advise people to do. But it's what I talk about I use the Army's troop leading procedures as the example. You receive the mission, you issue the warning order, which basically says, hey, we're going to solve a problem. And then we start moving towards the problem. Would you advise, with the startups that you're working with now, how do you advise them in that sort of, is it plan, then go, or go, then plan?
Well, you do need to have a plan, and you need to execute against a plan. And we were executing and succeeding against a plan. And so you can't just ad hoc this thing by the seat of your pants. And we had, and I recommend that to everybody, especially in that early phase when you're starting a company. That day you go, we're now started, we're now a real company, to all the time in the past can be as big as you want it to be. You have as much time to plan there as anything. That's the only time in your company's history that you have to say, we'll choose how much time we have to plan. The rest of it just takes it away from you. You have to go with the schedule of life. So yes, you have a plan, but what I would also say is be malleable, take stock. And as you start seeing some success, go back and look at yourself and your plan and say, why are we succeeding? Is it a brilliant plan? and it's just going the way we thought it was going to go? Or is there something else going on here? And in our case, there was something else going on here. There was a business model that came out of the execution, not the original plan. The original business plan was fairly simple, and we succeeded at a linear scale on that. But when we started going geometric, what was it? Was it just, yeah, that plan is really working? And the answer is no. The answer is there's something else that's different about us than our competitors. And here is what it is. And it's not what we said 3 years ago. That's still part of the DNA, but this is who we are. And this is why we're succeeding. So embrace it. And so plan ahead, execute a plan, but always look at that, and especially failures and successes, as points to validate that plan or relook at that. And in our case, fortunate for us, it was a series of successes that let us reevaluate. Now, one thing you could do is just say, skate. Okay, why break it? It's working. We really looked at it, and I'm not saying we changed anything except for to embrace who we were and to really communicate that to both our employees, our future employees, our partners, and our customers. But that wasn't because we didn't have a plan until year 3. It was that as we realized that there was change here happening in the company's success, we recognized why that was. And the story that we told about ISS wasn't really the same story as what was happening. So we told this story, but this is what's happening. So we rechanged the messaging, and we restored around why we were succeeding. And then that's really who we were for the next 10 or 15 years.
Could you talk some about not that recognition of it, but then how you basically got the rest of the team on board with it? Because there's the problem. I think the way Hark Harold put it when we had him on, Dad, was that some people fall in love with the problem, some people fall in love with their solution to the problem. And it sounds like that's basically where you were, that you had the solution and then you recognize, look, this isn't the right way to solve the problem, so we got to get over here. How did you get the rest of the team on?
I think that, I think just talking through it quite a bit and saying, and understanding, these are discriminators. We had, by that time, we had a little bit bigger of a leadership group, not just the original founders, but a few more that got added into the mix. Some of them were excellent executors and were actually doing that and changing the company and succeeding. Other ones were good communicators and were better at actually talking about it. That doesn't sound good because they're not actually doesn't sound like doing anything.
You don't have to call that.
It's a good skill to have.
So I think that, as the messaging started to evolve, the people that were doing a lot of the work started saying, yeah, that's or no, that's not exactly what we're doing, and it refined. And I think that process of us just kind of testing out messaging, even though we didn't know we were testing it, and then calling each other out on it a little bit, refined the message to the point where we were like, yeah, we all have a buy-in on this. We all buy this messaging. It wasn't a marketing exercise. Like you go through and say, we're going to do a branding exercise. We're going to do a vision, a mission. We're going to do it. It wasn't an exercise like that, but it was a process of leaders, people that liked each other, that worked together, that all had different kinds of roles, and refined each other as they went on, to the point where the message stopped changing from time to time and became very consistent. And we're like, obviously, that's who we are.
We talked a little bit about the actual hiring process and getting that right fit. What I'd love to get your lesson on is when the four of y'all said, all right, we need some other people. And what was that skill set that you either, threw out the window for somebody else to do and go, thank God we don't have to do that anymore, or brought somebody into the team to enhance?
Yeah, it's interesting. And I've thought, and we've actually talked about this quite a bit over the years ourselves. We honestly, we didn't hire a lot. So we hired one in the first year, and I think another 2 the second year. So it wasn't a lot of hiring in the first, but what we were looking for in those first few years was just clones of ourselves. We were jacks of all trades. We were engineers, we were leaders, we were customer people, we were whatever. We were like, we just need more of us. And so it was not a good strategy, but it was just kind of the default strategy is we just need some more of us. So let's go find people that have all those skill sets and bring them in and plug them in. And, we found a few, but there was an inflection point where we realized we have to hire people that are not us, because this jack of all trades thing's not working because some of the trades that we're doing, we're horrible at. So finding other people that are also horrible at those things are not a good idea. So then you start specializing a bit. So instead of, companies always start with this where there's a lot of generalists, so usually more generalists in the founders. They have to be generals, whether they are or not, they have to be. And then as they grow, you start losing hats as an owner. And that was a useful function for us, is finding people to say, look, I need you to take these 3 hats. I'm still going to kind of be involved in those 3 hats, but over time I'm not. And that was an interesting, not necessarily one that we were really good at in the beginning, but it was a point where we're like, hey, wait a minute here. Employee number 14, we need to be better. We need to do something different than what we've been doing. And so you start bringing in some specializations, and it was hard because you don't really know. You're not. The reason you're bringing it in is because you're not good at it. Mm-hmm. And so trying to interview somebody that you hope is better than you is always a bit of a challenge. So, and we had some hits and we had some misses, but yeah, your point is perfect. I mean, but our mistake, I think it was a mistake, was just trying to bring in clones for the longest time, for 2 or 3 years, just trying to find as many people that could be generalists as possible. And that's fine when you're small, but as you get a little bit bigger, you really do need some people that can say, no, I'm going to own that. I'm going to own that hat. And I'm going to be better at it than you as a generalist. So
how did those different skill sets and perspectives change the culture? Because I know it wouldn't, completely change it, but there's going to be some little tweaks. Things are going to be different when you bring in people with different perspectives. Could you talk a little bit about that, and then maybe also how you kept it close enough to where it was still the same culture?
Yeah, and that's you never want to keep your culture in exactly one spot. You really do want your culture to evolve and change. I mean, if you try to force everything to be like, man, I love the 70s. I wish we just lived in the 70s. Now, it's just not going to work. Okay. So you've got to always evolve it. And the biggest way that it's evolved are new people coming in that have their own ideas and their own thoughts. Your challenge as a leader is to make sure that their things that they want to do to change kind of rhyme with what you're already doing. Because if it's cross grain, it's going to be a problem. There's a reason why this country doesn't take the second place vote getter and make him vice president anymore. Okay. We used to do that. That's a bad idea because they're just cross grained with each other. Mm-hmm. So you need to find, so you want to be open to that evolution. And so, for example, you get people that come in that almost all of them worked somewhere else. And some of those places have really cool way of doing things. You want to capture those best practices, but you don't want to adopt them. We are our own personality. So if you came from a big defense contractor and this is the way they did it, this is the way they did it, and this is the way they did it, bring that experience to the table, but do it in a way that we do it. And so marry those two up. And if you, from a personality perspective, can't do that, and I found several people that couldn't, because this is just the way it should be. No. If you're so black and white, then you probably don't fit here. But if you're gray, then you can take those experiences and adapt them into what we're doing. And we just shifted a little bit. We didn't necessarily notice it, but we became a slightly different company. And every new person that came in did that. And the ones that did it correctly, the ones that weren't my way or the highway, this is the only way to do it. They were the ones that say, I'm using my experiences that I've gained from other good companies and bad ones. I'm bringing those into, and we just continue to evolve in a healthy way.
What's your thought? What's your thought on like leadership retreats? And what I mean is, you know, those ones where, you know, they do the annual thing. They'll go up to Vail, the 5 or 10 folks, and they'll come down with the golden, you know, tablet that's going to be the answer. What's your thought on that? Because y'all never really did that.
We did some of it. It wasn't always advertised, and it wasn't widespread. It was, you know, we had an extended kind of executive team that did offsites, and sometimes they were in cool places, and sometimes they were a few streets down. But I do think that there's some value from separating yourself physically from the company. And so a company like ISS had a strong physical presence. We're not a virtual, we had a large office. people working together, meetings, all kinds of stuff. It had some virtual stuff going on, but it had a physical presence to it. And so companies that have a physical presence, I think it changes your mindset to get away from it. I think it builds a nice barrier in there for you to think outside the box a little bit more. And so we would get together over a couple days, usually it's about 2 days, and have a little bit of an agenda, but mainly just get away from the day-to-day, try to stay off of our phones, try to stay off of email, and just try to have some conversations about some big topics. Where are we going? Who are we? Why are we not who we think we are? Why is this not working? Sometimes, why is this working so well, but we're not taking advantage of that? Just some of these bigger thoughts, but you're not worried about, hey, by the way, Fred wants to put in his notice, and and Jane says, if you don't give her a raise tomorrow, she's quitting, and all. You're not thinking about that today. You're just thinking about you give yourself permission to think a little bit less encumbered by the day-to-day tactical stuff that you have to do. And I think the physical separation is useful for that.
This episode of the Cam and Otis Show is brought to you by Tribe and Purpose.
Are you tired of dealing with the cost of bad leadership? It's time to make a change.
The Green Beret Leadership Program is your key to unlocking the full potential of your team.
By using GBLP to develop leaders in your business, you'll get a proactive and responsible team that embraces challenges, takes calculated risks, and takes action without constant supervision.
Developing great leaders can take a lot of time and energy, and that's why businesses tend to opt for the trial by fire and the school of hard knocks path to leadership. The truth is that wastes time and money. And folks, there's never enough of either one of those, and puts lots of extra stress on your leadership team.
Oh yeah, and that stress has lots of bad outcomes for your team. Poor leadership drives away your quality talent, and the longer you wait to fix the problem, the more talent you're going to lose and the more money you're going to lose.
With the Green Beret Leadership Program, you can use battle-tested leadership principles of the Green Berets to develop great leaders in your team faster than with the School of Hard Knocks. You'll see changes in just a few short weeks.
And the longer you wait to take action, the more damage poor leadership can do and will do to your business.
Learn more about the impact of GBLP, that's the Green Beret Leadership Program, can have on your business, and schedule your free coaching call with the Green Beret coach. That's me, folks, Otis. Now at findyourpurpose.coach/GBLP. I'll say it again, findyourpurpose.coach/GBLP, or you can click the link in the description below.
Y'all, don't leave your team to struggle alone on their own. If you're not giving them the tools they need to be great, then they're not going to be great. You can't expect them to. So give them the tools they need to be successful. Yeah, I think that's huge because it's just like anything else. If you're sitting there with the problem all day, every day, then you're too close to it. When you go start doing the dishes, that's when the ideas start to flow a little bit on it. Could you talk a little bit about the impact on? Because you talked a little bit, Dad. Your question was more leadership. We kind of went a little bit more in the problem solving aspect. Do you think that those type of things help with in a true leadership sense, not the problem solving aspect of the leadership, but like making you a better leader, a better communicator, those type of things?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I don't think we put enough attention on leadership types of skills, especially people leadership. I mean, our company was very project oriented. So as a result, you had a lot of project leadership structures and things that were optimized around projects and customers and things that had to get done. Mm-hmm. I don't think companies are strong, especially they're not strong on the people leadership side as much as they should be, especially when they're taking a project leader and saying you're also a people leader. The project leader traits always trump because they view that as their real job. The need to develop and work with people, and they kind of mush them in and say, you are on my team. I care about you only because I need to get my project done. And so you are a resource and a way to get my project, and I lead this project. When instead you really need to teach skills that have to do with the longer game, the big picture. You need people that say part of my job is, even though I'm a programmer, I'm also a leader on this software project that's got to get done, and I have 4 people that report to me. Those 4 people, you need to have skills to work with them and develop them for the long game that have nothing to do with the project that they're working on today. That lens is almost impossible for those dual-hatted people to take off unless you teach them that, unless you get in and set expectations and, in fact, do job performance on the leaders on whether they're able to do that part of their job. Most people have multiple aspects of their job. Most people, they don't just have one thing they do over and over again. So when you have a leader and you're the leader of the leader, you need to be sure that you help them understand that I need you to do this, I need you to do this, and I need you to do this. And this part, you're just thinking of as a this is a waste. This is taking away from my real job. You need to put importance on that. And that thing I'm talking about is people leadership that transcends the project that they're working on. In companies like ours, those hats are often worn by the same people. You don't have dedicated people leadership, and then you have people that they're responsible for, but they also have a project that they're working on that has a deadline. And that always trumps it in their mind unless you teach them to think otherwise. So that was something that we always strove for, and I'm not again giving us 100% grade on that.
What's that makes me think, actually, talking about that, of like, is it just the emphasis? Like, is it up to the leadership to make that emphasis that you need to be thinking about the people, not the project? Like, what comes to mind, that this is a kind of a funny example for it, but with my with the Engage Foundation for the Little Kids Rugby, I don't have to teach them to go try to win because they want to win. I have to teach them to be nice and respectful and these kind of things, because it's like that's the thing that they're not going to think about. So is that kind of what you're saying? Like, they naturally go towards the project, so you need to make the emphasis towards the personal?
Yeah, I guess I'm saying, first I'm saying set expectations. Mm-hmm. Set expectations on and then second, help them get the skills. The problem that I find is not that they want to win or lose, don't want to win or lose. It's that they're so focused on this other stuff that they just think this is not even really, this is an ends to my means. And you as a company think the same way. So it's up to me to set expectations. No, I don't think the same way. Yes, I want your project to succeed. And yes, I know that you need them. But I'm looking at these people as a long-term part of this company. And so I setting expectations, I need to put my money where my mouth is and give you some training and tools to now use that expectation I'm giving you. So I'm not saying, now some of them are good at it. They just need to know that's what they need to do. But most people aren't. Most people could use some refinement. And so the company does owe them, if they're going to set that expectations, they do owe them some training and some help on what are the tools that we could use. But the biggest problem that I had was helping people recognize that there really are two different competing goals here, that I need you to do both.
Where did you get your leadership development from, Jay? I mean, you started off from scratch and grew into a very successful CEO running a very successful business. How did you sustain and develop your skills?
Well, I had a lot of really excellent mentors, growing up. People, as I worked in the career in the industry for about 10 years before I started a company. Had some excellent leaders in some of those. Had some bad ones. Had some excellent ones, and I learned from both of them. That's sometimes you learn a lot from some people that you're like, that's, even if they're not bad and they're just mediocre, you kind of now have a definition of things that you can strive for. And but over the years, a number of different types of people that helped me out as I started. I think mentors are a great thing. I think if you can get mentors mentors, that's what I try to be for people. I've been in your shoes. When you can find people that have been in your shoes and just somebody to talk to, and I've had a couple of those over the years that I was very fortunate to have. But I also just had good leaders that never wanted to be an entrepreneur. They never wanted to start their company, but they were good leaders, and they were good. And I learned, and when I look back, I learned way more than I thought I was learning from them. But I learned some of them. One of them actually came in and worked for ISS years later. It was kind of funny. One of my bosses came in but I learned so much from him and people like him. But I mean, part of it was just an interest, taking an interest to that. And a lot of times, I was a computer scientist person, a programmer. You're not really thinking about that kind of stuff. Well, I just had a huge appetite for leadership, but not just leadership. How do companies run? How does HR work? Yes, I need to use it, but how does it actually work? How do the contracts group? How does finance work? How do these reports get generated? And I just had this massive curiosity when most of my peers were like, who cares? That stuff is crap. That's plumbing. That's nothing interesting. And so, and leadership is the same way. You watch how people treat people, how they treat projects, how they treat their company, how they get results. And how, I used to, this one particular individual, I used to watch him. He just was a master at getting people to come to his conclusions on their own so that you could own him. And it never looked like he was telling you what to do, but he was absolutely telling you what to do.
That's an amazing skill set. I mean, that's truly what you want your leaders to do, right? Is get people to buy in, not force them to do it. So
That's right.
And I also, I'm laughing at you too, because I'm thinking, Jay, the computer scientist, ticking along, but going, I wonder what's going on over at HR.
Yeah. I was definitely
That's
bizarre.
the problem solver, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. And at the time I wasn't thinking, because in 10 years, I'm going to start a company.
Mm-hmm.
At the time I was thinking all these parts fit together and they all have to, for this company and this organization to thrive. Well, how? I don't need to just look at the interfaces as a computer guy. I don't need to just stay in my black box and handle my black box. If I know how these other boxes work, we can optimize the machinery better. I can get better talent. Why am I not getting the right talent from HR? Why do I have people quitting on my team? Why are the contract terms that we're negotiating with the Air Force not correct according to what we're trying to do? If you stay in your black box, those things never get solved. They never get refined even. Forget solving, they just never don't get better. And so I think my interest and curiosity was just, this is a bunch of individual segments, cells that fit together. And I don't care just about the interfaces to mine, but how do they work so that I can help with empathy, help them meet their goals, and together we can be a much better organization. And it turned out that was very useful information when I started my own company.
Mm. After all these years of business, and now even in the advisory role, what's something that you see as you look ahead that is a change in how business will operate in a broad sense?
Are you specifically in the defense industry or broader?
Just business, because now I know that you operate outside the defense industry. You touch so many more industries and types of businesses. What do you see looking ahead?
Well, I see, and I get exposed to so many cool ideas, so many things that people are like, this is such a great idea. I'll kind of go back to the ones that I think are, so some of these germinate, some, not many. If you get a whole bunch of seeds that fall, maybe 10% of them will germinate, but only 10% of the 10% will actually flourish into actual trees. Okay. And we talk about the 90% failure rate, but we don't talk about the 9% failure rate. And the 9% are the ones that did germinate that failed anyway. And that's where how to scale and how to build a business, you need to think about, and I see people being a little bit more savvy to that than they used to be. I see there being a little bit more of a holistic view of, for example, it used to be the vision is, if you're an entrepreneur, you just need to kill yourself. You need to sacrifice your family because that's just the way it is. You need to sacrifice your health because you need to sacrifice your friends because that's what it takes to survive and succeed. But I think we're now seeing that that's not necessarily true. What you really need to do is you need to be a healthy person. And that means you need to have a healthy family. You need to have healthy friendships. You need to be able to understand your life outside of what you do. Because if you don't, then you're going to be part of the 9% that fails because you succeeded. And you want to be part of the 1% that succeeds. And the way to do that is to say, I'm ready for that next set of stuff. I'm ready for success. I'm also ready to be a healthy, good person that people want to be around. Mm-hmm. And that will give you a foundation. It's this, you've heard it before. This is not a sprint, it's a marathon. Mm-hmm. But if you sprint, you're giving up your family, you're giving up everything. If you're going to sprint for 30 years, you will not make it to year 2. Yeah. So
You'll be the last man standing when you collapse, because there won't
Yeah.
be anybody who wants to
Yeah.
be around you if you're that
But it is
person.
the other ones and the few that have said, look, now work life balance. I'm not saying, hey, look, you can get this done with 20 hours a week. It's fine. You do have to work hard and you do have to care. But I'm just saying this all encompassing focus on your company is not what it takes to survive long term. And so that's what we've been taught for decades,
Mhm.
that it's the ones that just push the envelope and give everything up in exchange for a dream that succeed. That's not who's succeeding today.
It reminds me of, you talk a lot in entrepreneurship of, like, as the startup phase, you need to think about scale. And you need to have your systems ready, so when that time comes, even you said this earlier, Jay, when that time comes, you're ready for it, so you can sustain that growth. It's literally the same thing. It's like, yeah, you could just put in the sprint forever, but then when you have to make that adjustment, it's going to be hard. Whereas you can build your systems, your own personal systems, so that when that time comes, you can keep sustaining it longer and longer.
That's right. Yep, absolutely. I mean, there are times you do need to sprint. And so you do need to have that skill set or those muscles for that. But then there are those other times that you need to be more built for a marathon, and you do need to know that you need to do both, and you need to know that you have a gear shift that you have to use, and it means that you're moving into some different skill sets. And if you don't have those, then you need to either develop them or find some people that do to come join you.
Yeah, and I can't remember who said it, but heck, is probably, it sounds like a Simon Sinek thing, but it's the play the infinite game, right? I mean,
Mhm.
it's there's yes, the goalposts continue to move, but you want them to continue to move. It's
Right.
because if you get to the end zone, and well, last time I checked, it's 100 yards or 100 meters if you're playing rugby, and then
Thank you.
once you step out the end zone, you're out of play, right? So we
Yep.
want the goalposts to continue to move.
Yep. Yeah, and in business, I mean, it's just a continual journey. I mean, it's business isn't about a nice exit that you get and now you're done and now that's not really business. Is about what happens before the exit. It's the journey, and we were fortunate. I was fortunate to be a part of it for 20 years. Not everybody, and I'm glad that it didn't go shorter, even if there would have been triple the money. But after 5 years, it was the journey, the people, and everything that and like you said, goalposts moving every day. We have people that came in and said, "We'll buy your company for $1 million." Well, it ended up selling for 500 times that. But at the time, we didn't know that. That sounded like a lot of money. And the goalposts were just. But I mean, that wasn't the definition of why we're in this game. That's not the score that we're hoping to get. The score that we're hoping to get is to be a part of a really interesting, growing organization, influence it, help missions that are really important, make some good money, bring in families, take care of those families, get them some good wages, some good benefits, and have them be a part of something that's bigger than themselves. And that's what we did, and that's what I miss about ISS. It's I do miss it, and that's why I'm realizing I miss it more and more as I'm talking to you. So
Don't tell the missus about this,
yeah,
okay? Don't tell her it was Otis again. I just want to say that. I'm putting the caveat in here.
yeah,
Uh, Man, and that's so true. And that vision, that clarity is what you said something earlier that was a great reminder to me, and the way you put it just really, because I talk about after action reviews all the time. Stop and pause. What we do, all those sort of things, right? And we do it in Tribe and Purpose also. But the way you put it was so powerful, that I really like that reminder. And it's hey, we're looking back what we've been doing, and what did we do that got us to this success here today, and focusing on that, and then building off of that, because we always build on success. So that's what I learned today. I mean, it's so important to take that pause and say, well, what did we do 3 weeks ago that got us to this win today? And I think that's so important. Camden, how about you? What'd you learn?
Yeah, Jay, I'm not sure if you coined this phrase, but is it going to be one of my new favorites? Talking about, if you're gray, you can learn from the black and white. Yeah, it's people who are there who black and white. it's hard to work with them because they see it only that one way. But if you are willing to live in that gray area, then you can take the good things and you can still learn. I mean, I think that's one of the things that got me in entrepreneurship. Thinking back to Uncle Ben's farm on this organic, practically Amish farm there, and then going to school and studying this huge agricultural business. It's like, okay, there's the two spectrums. There's something in the sweet spot in the middle there. And I think that is where you're going to find a lot of good solutions for complicated problems in that gray area.
Awesome. Jay, how about you? What'd you learn?
Well, it's like I just said. I mean, I learned that I miss it. I miss what we're doing, and that's really, I think that's the reason that I help and mentor other people, is because it gives me a bridge. Because I didn't realize towards the end I'm kind of like, yeah, it's time to go, but I didn't think I'd miss it as much as I do. So I do. I miss the terror of having your own business. It's sheer terror. And I miss that, and you know, so it's good to relive that, and I get a chance to kind of live that without some of the terror when I help other people. So yeah, I think I'm realizing why I'm trying to do that. It's all completely selfish.
Well, you're filling up both cups, because you can fill that cup up, then you can set it up in the cupboard, and then go up to Grand Lake for the weekend, right?
That's right. That's absolutely right. Yep.
Awesome. Jay, how do folks find you, learn more about what you got going on?
Yeah, I've got to, I volunteer, and it's important to me. The Exponential Impact group here in Southern Colorado, Colorado Springs specifically, helps startups, and we're trying to build up the startup community in Colorado Springs, and it's primarily focused on companies outside the defense industry, which is interesting because that's where but it's in its 6th or 7th year, and I'm passionate about that. So they can find me through Exponential Impact. Or on the defense side, I have my high stakes partners that I do some consulting for, mostly for founders that have started defense businesses that just need somebody to talk to. So both of those two places, I'm on LinkedIn, and the websites for Exponential Impact and high stake partners are out there.
Awesome. Well, hey, Jay, it is great to catch up with you today, man. Thank you so much for carving out some time today.
Yeah, I really enjoyed talking to you guys. It was time flew, and you guys are really good at what you do, and I really enjoyed catching up with you.
Thanks, man. Thanks. Camden, run us out.
All right. Thank you all for listening to today's episode of the Cam and Otis Show, and a special thanks to our guest, Jay Jesse, for joining us today. Remember, you can watch full episodes of the show on YouTube at the Cam and Otis Show. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to share it with other lifelong learners in your tribe so that they can enjoy it too. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And now, as always, the full archive of episodes available at www.camandotisshow.com. Thanks again, and we'll see you all next time.